Most people spend their entire lives trying to be the hero, the chosen one, or the primary person the whole story revolves around. And a surprising number of those individuals end up feeling utterly miserable. That is the part nobody says out loud. Being the main character of your own life sounds highly appealing on paper. It sounds like possessing true confidence, building high self-worth, and finally owning every room you walk into. But for millions of people right now, that exact idea became the single greatest source of anxiety and burnout they have ever experienced in their lives. So they stopped. They made a different choice entirely by deciding to become NPCs, and most of the world laughed at them for making that choice. Anyone who plays video games knows that an NPC is a non-playable character, like a blacksmith in the tavern corner repeating the same 3 lines, or a farmer tending his fields instead of going on an adventure. You will find shopkeepers who open at 8 and ignore the dragon attacking 5 miles away. These figures exist purely in the background, running predictable routines with zero growth and no heroic quests. Real, breathing human beings are now choosing that exact life on purpose. They do this not because they failed and not because they are broken or defeated, but because the alternative became completely unbearable. Understanding the reason requires going back to where this whole situation started. Around 2014 to 2018, the term NPC started circulating across Reddit and gaming communities as a way to describe people who just go through the motions. They wake up, work, eat, sleep, and repeat. They have no original thinking and no self-direction, just running social scripts on loop. The tone back then was pure mockery, and calling someone an NPC was an insult because it meant they were not awake to reality. Then the year 2020 happened, TikTok grew rapidly, and with it came the hashtag that launched thousands of cringe compilations. This was called main character syndrome. Millions of younger people started filming themselves walking through coffee shops in slow motion, romanticizing every ordinary moment and treating their morning commute like the opening scene of a prestige drama. The whole world became a movie set. Every stranger was cast as a supporting role, and every setback was a plot point designed to make them stronger and more interesting. At first, this was actually quite beautiful. The original idea behind main character energy had real psychological value, as therapists consistently state that self-narrative shapes behavior. How you see yourself in your own story directly influences your confidence, your choices, and your relationships. Moving through the world believing your life has weight and direction actually helps you make better decisions, meaning the impulse was not wrong in its origin. But then the trend soured very quickly. Main character syndrome rotted into something much darker as the hunger for validation became relentless. If you are the main character, every single conversation must orbit you, turning casual social gatherings into required plot points for your personal arc. Other people stop being human and become background props, and social media poured gasoline on all of it. The algorithm rewarded the loudest, the most dramatic, and the most polished content available. Being the main character stopped being an internal mindset and turned into a full-time external performance. Calling this exhausting does not fully cover the harsh reality of the situation. By 2022, people started cracking under the pressure. Forums filled up with a different kind of confession, where individuals openly admitted they were completely tired. They were sick of performing and drained from needing every single moment to feel important. Out of that collective exhaustion came the counter movement known as the voluntary NPC. This is a growing community of people who looked at the noise of main character culture and silently said, no thank you. It takes a specific perspective to arrive at that choice and view being a background character as a form of freedom. Psychology actually explains this with precision through a well-documented cognitive bias called the spotlight effect. Researchers Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky published work on this exact phenomenon at Cornell University. Your brain tricks you into believing other people notice you far more than they actually do in reality. You might stumble over a word during a work meeting and replay it for 3 days straight, or wear the wrong outfit to a party and spend the whole night convinced every pair of eyes in the room noticed it. The spotlight follows you everywhere, and your nervous system reacts to it like it is completely real. This feeling is not real because nobody is watching that closely. The moment a person fully absorbs that truth, something physically changes. The pressure drops, the constant need to perform softens, and for people who spent years under that imaginary scrutiny, discovering that the audience was never there turns out to be a highly freeing realization. They stop performing and start living, which serves as the first gateway into the voluntary NPC mindset, and it carries real psychological weight. The second gateway is an unusual concept that comes from a word most people have probably never heard, which is Sonder. Writer John Koenig coined the term in his Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. Sonder is the sudden, disorienting realization that every random person you pass on the street carries an inner life just as layered, emotional, and complicated as yours. This includes the woman arguing softly on her phone outside the pharmacy, the guy eating alone at the corner diner every Tuesday, or a random delivery driver who gives you a nod and keeps moving. All of them are the main character of something, and all of them carry entire worlds in their heads. Voluntary NPCs do not just accept Sonder, they find deep comfort in it. The idea that you are one of 8 billion equally complex human beings, that you are not the center, and that your story is one thread in something vast stops feeling terrifying and starts feeling peaceful. You are not insignificant, you are just not uniquely special in the way the internet told you that you needed to be. That is a wholly different thing, and the distinction carries real weight for those experiencing it. The progression of this movement reveals a highly notable shift in social dynamics. Research on personality and social behavior points to a counterintuitive outcome. People who stop fighting for attention, drop the performance, and stop steering every conversation back toward themselves tend to become more attractive to others rather than less. They become better listeners and make the people around them feel genuinely seen. Some writers call this quality giver energy, as these individuals put more into social spaces than they take out. Consider the most comfortable person in your life to be around. They are rarely the loudest person or the one who always circles conversations back to their own story. They are usually the quiet individual who remembers what you said 2 months ago, asks real follow-up questions, and seems sincerely interested in what is happening in your life. Voluntary NPCs, when they operate from a healthy place, become those exact people. They act as the sidekicks who quietly turn out to matter more than the hero, and the supporting characters the whole story would fall apart without. There is a negative aspect to this lifestyle that requires attention as well. Not everyone who calls themselves an NPC does so from a place of peace. For some people, feeling like a background character in their own life is a symptom of something far more serious. Psychologists call it depersonalization, which is the clinical experience of watching your life from the outside, feeling like a passenger in your own body, and moving through days without any sense that your choices matter. That is not a lifestyle choice, as it connects directly to depression, unprocessed trauma, and severe anxiety disorders. The line between healthy detachment and dangerous drift is a strict reality that is not always visible from the inside. Living on full autopilot, waking up, working, scrolling for 3 hours, sleeping, and repeating without any actual sense of direction or agency forms the autopilot trap. The difference between a voluntary NPC and someone caught in that trap comes down to personal agency. One person chose this consciously, while the other did not notice when the choice was made for them by a culture that stopped asking bigger questions. Determining whether a routine brings peace or just produces numbness is a helpful evaluation. Peace feels like a full exhale, whereas numbness feels like nothing at all. Someone deviating from their usual script to take a different path or say yes to something unexpected might feel excited, or they might feel incapable of even imagining what that looks like. Observing those reactions provides a clear picture of a person's mental state and overall situation. The 2021 film Free Guy captured this tension exceptionally well. Ryan Reynolds plays a bank teller living inside an open-world video game as a non-playable character. He wears the same blue shirt every day, gets the same coffee every morning, and gets robbed at gunpoint with a smile because that is what his programming dictates. The story progresses not by having him escape his simple life to become a warrior, but by having him first find meaning within his small, consistent routine before expanding it on his own terms. Nobody tells him to do this, he just makes a conscious choice to wake up and live differently. This serves as a highly accurate metaphor for the voluntary NPC movement. The character does not reject his quiet, peaceful existence, but rather refuses to let it stay unconscious. He becomes intentional about his simplicity rather than just being programmed into it. He keeps the peace and adds awareness to his days. That combination of simplicity and full consciousness turns out to be something the loudest, most performative characters in the game completely lack. This brings up the debate of whether choosing to be an NPC represents wisdom or surrender. The answer depends entirely on personal motivations and individual goals regarding what a person is running from and running toward. Choosing simplicity because performance culture does not reflect who you are is an act of clear self-awareness rather than weakness. A person might find more meaning in small, consistent acts than in big, dramatic moments, wanting to be the individual who shows up quietly and reliably for loved ones without needing credit for it. Throughout history, many individuals lived lives that looked unremarkable from the outside while building something deeply meaningful in private. A fulfilling life does not require a cinematic narrative, and nobody owes the world a daily performance. On the other hand, adopting the NPC identity because being fully seen feels too risky creates a different dynamic. Someone who has been dismissed or hurt enough times might feel that being invisible is safer than being visible, leading them to decide their wants and their voice do not deserve space. In that context, the identity is not peace, but rather a form of armor. Armor worn long enough starts to feel like skin, causing the person to stop noticing it is there and eventually forget there was ever anything underneath it at all. The generation navigating this right now, particularly people between 18 and 35, faces distinct modern pressures. The demand to be interesting, marketable, relatable but not boring, successful but not intimidating, and visible but not arrogant runs constantly from every direction at once. Walking away from those pressures is not laziness, as for many people, it is simply a method of psychological survival in a demanding environment. Survival and thriving, however, have never been the same thing. The healthiest version of this movement involves active communities on platforms like Reddit and X, along with creators building audiences around intentional simplicity. This healthy approach carries one clear message, which is that nobody has to perform for an audience, and life does not have to look like a movie. However, a person does have to show up for their life consciously and fully, even when nobody is watching. This conscious participation matters most during the moments when nobody is around to observe. A reliable test of whether a person has found peace or simply checked out involves examining their private actions. Doing the things that matter when there is zero audience, no post to make, and no story to film indicates that the individual has found something worth protecting. This can be called an NPC life, intentional simplicity, or whatever description fits best, and it can be owned without apology. A person sitting still and waiting for their story to begin, instead of quietly building it, is facing a different issue entirely, and the core problem in that scenario was never main character syndrome. A meaningful life does not require an audience to have lasting value. It only needs to be genuinely lived.